collaboration is obviously has a broad meaning. Okay, so you could talk about collaboration at so many different levels. But I think for PNG, collaboration, as I see it, is about the collaboration between Total and Exxon. And the reason why I raise that is that in Australia we have a very classic example where there has not been sufficient collaboration. So we have one project where we have 3 LNG projects right next door to each other, and their gas fields are all separate, perform differently, and that has had a consequence for them and also has a consequence for cost. In the other side of Australia, in Western Australia, we have 2 projects where the 2 gas fields are 50 kilometres apart, but the plants are 500 kilometres apart and their pipelines cross over each other. That clearly isn't collaboration, and it's not capital efficient. And you could argue in a country like PNG or a country like Australia where there are limited services and limited logistics support, if there isn't collaboration and you're building new projects when you should just be sharing infrastructure, you introduce inflation, introduce added cost, and lose a lot of synergy. So I think collaboration, as I see it, is manifested in PNG by the fact that they have not made the mistake that we've seen in Australia and in some other locations. Australia's been particularly bad. The shared infrastructure, the trains on the same site, they will have a benefit, not only just the inherent profitability, but the risk of execution and the consequences for inflation in the economy when they're building it. So that's one aspect of collaboration. The other aspect of collaboration is around the critical role of government dealing equitably with the landowners and collaborating with them and dealing with them. You've heard in the conference they've discussed identifying who the right landowners are, right? That is a critical piece of collaboration, because absent resolving that, you have all sorts of challenges, whether it's a lack of equity to the right people, and eventually that manifests as instability. So collaboration could be at that level, or it could be at the super majors level. And I think collaboration then occurs all the way through. So we've heard PNG Power talking about, and IP3 talking about how they're trying to build the power system. Well, collaboration between the industry, between the agencies, between the suppliers of equipment, between the finances, all of that is going to be fundamental to essentially a transition to a more dynamic power industry, which is probably as important, if not more important, than the LNG projects themselves, because they have a much bigger multiplier effect and they lift people, they help lift the country. I think it's about the lens that you see yourself and those around you. I think when PNG, absent the existence of an LNG project like PNG LNG, they saw themselves very different. It was a struggle. It's almost like, use the analogy, if you don't throw 6, you don't get on the board to play snakes and ladders. They were focused on getting on the board. When you're on the board, it's a whole different story again. So I think that what's happened is PNG has made its mark. It's achieved that milestone. It's on the global playing field now. And the key for the government is, between commercial and political aspirations, not to take their eye off that board, right? And as I said in my presentation, signing a gas agreement is great, fantastic, but it doesn't guarantee you a timely FID. And a non-timely FID could have severe consequences for this country. So I think my point being is that, it's an evolution. The other thing that's an evolution is that suddenly your entity that's funding the project is incorporated in PNG, whereas before you didn't incorporate it in PNG. Why? Because you didn't want the money to come into PNG bank accounts. You wanted the money to be in offshore proceeds accounts. So your point about coming of age, spot on. It is coming of age. It's a level of maturity now. So, and they've done their first sovereign bond. Once again, another statement of coming of age. So yeah, I think, in every respect you're right. For me, it's different when you're a speaker, because you spend a lot of time, I mean, you know, we've all got busy jobs. You spend a lot of time reflecting and thinking about what message do I want to get, who's in the room. What's nice about this conference is that, excuse me, is that you have conferences in Singapore, Australia, New York, all these places, where that is one conference of an inordinate number of issues. In PNG, this conference is so central to what is important to them. There's a real passion here, right? And the leadership arrive, and it's not just a box-ticking exercise. This particular conference has a high degree of influence, right, and meaning for the. So when you're a visitor here, it's reflected in many ways. How passionate people are about what they're saying and they're thinking. Secondly, it's who comes to the conference. Thirdly, it's just the sense of that the conference is part of something. There's a lot of talk fests, right? Where it could be one conference of 100, but that is not the case in this particular case. So to me, it just feels that it's more not just a box ticking exercise. There are professional conference companies, as you know, as you are. And conference is neither here nor there. It's relevant and curious and interesting, but this one, I think, to me personally, feels like it's actually part of that fabric, you know, of seeing the next step. So.